Balabha Girivada Dadi Yasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yasodanandana Brajajanaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjavi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjavi Hari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pariyajagatarja Astatara His Divine Grace Station Bhaktivedanta Swami śrī-bhagavān ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki Grantharaj śrī-mad-bhagavatam ki Gaur Premanandi Grantharaj śrī-mad-bhagavatam, the king of all granthas or scriptures. So here's our, now I don't have to look over here anymore, you just look right here. Refuge from the siege of Kali. And one of the discussions we had earlier was the last words that Krishna spoke to Uddhava before leaving. The last words he spoke to Uddhava were the last words he spoke to anybody. And Uddhava requested Krishna once again, after hearing Uddhava Gita, to explain to him what he heard, or what he had explained, to explain to him what he explained to Lord Brahma. So that's Canto 2, Chapter 9. The Chatur Sloki verses. But the context of that discussion with Lord Brahma goes back to the earlier part of Chapter 9. It comes in the sequence of the process of creation, and in the process of creation, Brahma appears. Brahma appears from the lotus flower, that's from the lotus stem, from the navel of Garbhodakshya Vishnu. But he doesn't know anything, because there isn't anything, there's darkness in all directions. No sun, no moon, no flashlight. It's a nice description that the section of Canto 2, Chapter 9 that leads up to the Chaturshloki verses is very nice. We discussed this, so just to repeat quickly. Being Lord Brahma, he's very intelligent. He didn't have to go to school. There was no school to go to. There's nothing. but he's very intelligent. After 100 lifetimes of flawless execution of varnashram duties, makes one eligible for the post of Brahma. So he's highly virtuous and highly intelligent, and he wants to know who he is. Who am I? And to understand who am I, where have I come from? Self-inquisitive, in darkness. So he hears the sound of water, the waves of the Garbhodak ocean splashing. So then you can't understand the absolute truth by reasoning faculty, but we still use it. It's reasonable. So he uses his reasoning faculty, and he reasons, I'll follow that sound and I may find where I've come from, my source, the source of origin. So it climbs down the stem and climbs down the stem, and by sensory inspection he can't find the end of the stem. And then he hears tapa, tapa, tapa. He knows what that means. It's a nice code, sutra. Goes back up, sits on the lotus and starts tapasya. And he engages in tapasya and meditation for 1,000 celestial years. Now, in Srila Prabhupada's purport to this verse, it's text 8 of chapter 9, he gives some numbers which I can't sort out how the numbers are derived, but I won't do it right now. If somebody later can understand how these numbers work, please let me know later. 1 of our years times 6 times 30 times 12 times 1,000. It's not in relation to yugas, it's in relation to celestial years. So 1,000 celestial years times 1,000 of our years times 12 times 30 times 6. Anyway, that's a big number, and that's one celestial year, 1,000 such celestial years. So he was absorbed. And as this is the cover for śrī-bhagavān, the same narration as in the Bhagavatam, he heard 2 mantras. One is from the goddess, not the original goddess Saraswati, Gayatri mantra, the Madan Gopal mantra, same mantra that we receive, same mantra that Madan Gopal received, the Madan Gopal mantra, Gopakumar received, same. And he chanted the mantra, and he chanted the mantra, and long time, after some long time, the second mantra depicted in this painting, the flute song of Krishna, that's not described in Brahma Samhita, but that's part of the meditation upon the Supreme Lord that he did, or a major part of the tapa and meditation. And after a long time, the personality of Godhead, the original source of everything, the way it's described in the 9th chapter of 2nd canto, Lord Vishnu appeared. Lord Vishnu in Vaikuntha, surrounded by his Vaikunthavasi associates, and surrounded by the 11 and the 16 and the this and that, by X number of potencies. And in the commentary, some of the names of some of the potencies are identified. And Lord Vishnu, much to Brahma's amazement, Lord Vishnu rises to receive Lord Brahma. And he extends his hand and shakes his hand. Friendship, relationship between Brahma and Lord Vishnu. Servant and friend. And Brahma's quite amazed. Lord Vishnu is very kind. Lord Vishnu says many nice complimentary things of Lord Brahma. Here's one of them. You may ask from me, the giver of all benediction, all that you may desire. You may know that the ultimate benediction, as the result of all penances, is to see me by realization, which is, he's confirming. It doesn't get better than this. But still you may ask. So Brahma's intelligent, he's inquisitive. He's not so much asking, what am I to do? You know, the how-to favorite question that devotees like to ask. It's, he wants to understand more about the person, and specifically, he wants to understand that which is in relation to his service, the Supreme Lord, who's all spiritual, from whom everything comes, including the material. So he wants the Lord to explain that to him. Kindly fulfill my desire. May I please be informed how, in spite of your transcendental form, you assume the mundane form, although you have no such form at all. You, by your own self, manifest different energies for annihilation, generation, acceptance, and maintenance by combination and permutation. So to even understand the question, it's a little puzzling how to understand the question, or to speak of the answer. But the essence of it is, because it's in relation to his service, because Brahma has to be a principal instrument to what's being asked by him. So he wants to understand the relationship, not exactly the technology, but the relationship between him as the all-spiritual source of everything, and part of that which comes from the all-spiritual source of everything is the material creation. So that's the scene, and then the Chaturshloki begins. So before we begin the Chaturshloki, we'll recite this verse. Narayanam namaskritya Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet. Before reciting the śrī-bhagavān, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayana, unto Narayana Rishi, the supremmost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. So having heard Brahma's question and promised in advance to fulfill his desire, he expressed his desire. Here's the Lord speaking. So we'll chant responsively, please. Śrī-bhagavān uvāca jñānaṁ parama-guhyaṁ me yad vijñāna-samanvitam sarahasyaṁ tad-aṅgaṁ gaditaṁ mayā gṛhāṇa gaditaṁ mayā. Do it again. Jñānaṁ parama-guhyaṁ me yad vijñāna-samanvitam sarahasyaṁ tad-aṅgaṁ gṛhāṇam gaditaṁ mayā. Now, I wanted to start with reading Bhaktivinoda Thakur's very interesting translation, which appears in Jaiva Dharma. Jaiva Dharma is a very interesting publication by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It's a commentary on several essential Vaishnava literatures, one of which is commentary on śrī-bhagavān in a question-answer context. So, in discussing this verse, here's Bhaktivinoda Thakur's meaning. And it was in Bengali, but the translations of the different Bengali versions are quite similar to the one you see here. O Brahma, knowledge of me is non-dual, and yet has four distinct divisions: jñāna, vijñāna, rahasya, and tad-aṅgaṁ. Listen, jñāna is my swarup. My relationship with my potency is vijñāna. Jiva is my rahasya, or secret, and pradhana is tad-aṅgaṁ. A jiva cannot understand this knowledge by his own intelligence, but you can understand the same by my mercy in conjunction with devotional service. I am explaining this science so that you may take it up carefully. So that's quite different. The rendering, how he breaks up these four parts: jnānaṁ, vijñānaṁ, rahasya, and tad-aṅgaṁ. Tad-aṅgaṁ, in Srila Prabhupada's translation, tad-aṅgaṁ is necessary paraphernalia for the process of devotional service. So, pradhan, or material, which is responsive to the question, it's tad-aṅgaṁ. It's his paraphernalia, it's his energy, it's his potencies. Because Brahma has already seen that the whole of the Vaikuntha realm has been revealed along with the names of the different potencies. So the Lord already has different potencies. And when those potencies expand, they may appear in the spiritual, they may appear in the material, or the reflection of the spiritual potencies. That's the material, that's tad-aṅgaṁ. Knowledge about me, as described in the scriptures, is very confidential. Now, the confidential, in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's translation, it's mysterious or non-dual. Yet it has four divisions. And it has to be realized in conjunction with devotional service. That's rahasya. So devotional service is identified as a mystery in conjunction with devotional service. To realize the relationship of stuff with the source of stuff, to realize it, not just to have a theoretical, but to realize it, is the medium, is devotional service. Very similar to what we heard, the detail of Uddhava's hearing from Krishna about devotional service. The perfection of devotional service, to see Krishna everywhere. within everything. He's everywhere. And it sounds like, we discussed this, it sounds like the Paramatma feature, the all-pervasive Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is Paramatma feature. But it's Krishna's not as Paramatma speaking to Uddhava, it's Bhagavan. And here it's also Bhagavan speaking to Brahma. And remember, Uddhava has already heard all this not so long ago. And he has capacity to not just remember it, but to understand it. It's similar, not the same, but it's similar to the relationship between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Rupa Goswami. Rupa Goswami was empowered, explicitly empowered by Lord Chaitanya to understand everything, to perfectly realize everything, and to write books that expand on the teachings of everything, specific to this sarahasyaṁ, or the mystery of devotional service. So Rupa Goswami did that under the order of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the mystery of devotional service. Sarahasyaṁ is repeated a number of ways, and I was like a little bit stuck on how to move forward with this, because the purport is very long, and not everyone has the interest in detailed philosophical discussions, especially after a weekend of nectar. So exactly how to cover 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6.5 pages of purport in a little bit of time. I didn't think I would try to cover it. But mention, rather, the mystery of devotional service phrase is used multiple. I didn't count them, multiple times. Here's how the purport begins. The first paragraph is a page and a half. First paragraph is a page and a half. Lord Brahma is the topmost devotee of the Lord within the universe, and therefore the personality of Godhead replied to his 4 principal inquiries in 4 important statements, which are known as the original Bhagavatam in 4 verses. These were Brahma's 4 questions. 1. What are the forms of the Lord in both matter and in transcendence? 2. How are the different energies of the Lord working? There's technology. 3. How does the Lord play with his different energies? The play with his different energies is compared to the spider moving along its web. From the body of the spider comes a web, and then the spider goes and moves around the web. So how does the Lord play with his different energies? 4. How may Brahma be instructed to discharge the duty entrusted to him, or to us? How are we supposed to do the things that are requested of us or encouraged for us to do, especially when we're not so competent, and we're supposed to do something that requires competence? The prelude to the answers is this verse under discussion. So officially and formally, the Chaturshloki verses begin with the next verse, 32. So this is the prelude to 32 through 36. Wherein the Lord informs Brahma that knowledge of him, the Supreme Absolute Truth, as it is stated in the revealed scriptures, is very subtle and cannot be understood unless one is self-realized by the grace of the Lord. The Lord says that Brahma may take the answers as he explains them. This means that transcendental knowledge of the Absolute Supreme Being can be known if it is made known by the Lord Himself. And it goes to mental speculation, can't understand it. Thus it is called the Supreme Confidential Wisdom. Out of many liberated souls, someone may be qualified to know the personality of Godhead. It goes on. These verses are essential because it's essential truths in relation to the absolute truth. Brahma is our original preceptor, or the original acharya in our sampradaya. He received the knowledge in full and passed it on to Narada, to Vyasa. Vyasa compiled it. So his realization, the gift that Vishnu gave, or Krishna gave to Lord Brahma, is very important for us to understand, although it's not easy to understand. But in conjunction with devotional service, it's possible. So it's receiving knowledge in disciplic succession is imperative, and then acting in devotion, or tad-aṅgaṁ, the paraphernalia of devotional service is seeing the connection of the paraphernalia. Just like, many of you know this, the paraphernalia used in deity worship, the conch, the bell, the chamara, the altar, the plates, the paraphernalia of deity worship is worshipable. Tadiya is as worshipable as the deity is worshipable. So to be respected, so treated in its very, very special way, because it's worshipable. When Bharata, in Ramayana, when Bharata was denied by Lord Ramachandra, no, you should come back and be the king because you're the right ruler, by law, by quality, by everything, and Ram refused. It's the order of our father. You should become king, and I should go to the forest. He tried this way, that way. Ram was insistent, so Bharata took the shoes, placed padukas in front of Lord Ramachandra, returned back to Ayodhya, respecting the padukas as Ramchandra, and the padukas sat on the throne. And the padukas of Ram ruled, although Bharata ruled as a representative of the padukas. Anyway, there are a number of places in ISKCON where there's paraphernalia of our founder Acharya, and it's sacred, and it's worshipped like this founder Acharya is worshipped. You get the point. Tad-aṅgaṁ means to see the relationship in devotional service, the relationship of things that are used in devotional service, and what is it that's ineligible for devotional service. One who knows the science, there's certain things that cannot be offered, but many things can be offered. And seeing those things in that relationship with, it's the part of the mystery. I'll just say the same thing in another way. With these same ears, many years ago, I heard Srila Prabhupada seated on the Vyasa in Brooklyn, then again later in Manhattan, tell us from the Vyasa, this temple's not in Brooklyn. Or in Manhattan, this temple's not in New York. It's in Vaikuntha, or it is Vaikuntha. And then he explained, Vaikuntha means that which is in relation to. And that becomes, so you make your home Vaikuntha. You make a house a temple because it's used in relation to. And it becomes, if it's one of the ways of fulfilling those 5 most potent things, is you make your home a place of the Lord. And you reside in that which is the place of the Lord. But it's not just a name, it's a consciousness. Then you're in Vaikuntha consciousness. And the place becomes Vaikuntha. So I'm not going to go through the whole sarahasyaṁ, but just to mention this is the introduction to the 4 essential verses, and they're not going to be understood, or they can be understood only through the medium of devotional service and not otherwise. And even through the medium of devotional service, as expressed, what we just read, it's subtle. And things that are subtle are not easily understood. So how do you approach things that are subtle and not easily understood? You hear them, and you hear them again, and you hear them again, in a respectful mood, again and again and again. And by purification, by hearing again and again, and by the mercy of that sound vibration, śrī-bhagavān sound vibration, they may be understood. And how it is so, it's part of the mystery of devotional service. But mercy descends through the medium of devotional service, and that which is subtle and not easy to understand otherwise may become understood. That's what happened with Brahma. Then to reciprocate with that sincere effort, it's not just mechanically repeating again and again, it's sincere inquisitiveness and hearing that sound again and again, and one may gradually, progressively start to understand a little more, a little more, a little more. And that little more can be very inspiring, very encouraging to go further and further and further and further. And Krishna may appear. That's the fullness of his, as we heard. The mercy doesn't get any better than that, Krishna revealing himself. So we can't stamp our little foot and say, Krishna, hurry up. Reveal yourself, please. Sorry, you're ineligible, if that's the mood. Enthusiasm doesn't mean making demands. Intent enthusiasm. Greed doesn't mean making demands. It has to do with spiritualization of our aspiration. Becoming increasingly dependent upon mercy, becoming increasingly shelter-taking in mood, exclusive shelter-taking in mood. And then the reciprocation is in the hands of the sweet Lord. Fortunately, he's sweet. He's very kind. But when, in the circumstances, that's entirely in the Lord's hand. So I thought that would be a nice way to end this section, and for that matter, my speaking part was to tell a nice pastime where the sweetness of Krishna is described. The phrase in Sanskrit is madhurena samapayat, and that is, in any narration, in a writing or a speaking or something, it's nice, it's standard to end on a sweet note. So that's what I wanted to do this evening. End on a sweet note of a pastime that Krishna performed in Dwarka, because next year we're going to be speaking about the super sweet pastimes of Krishna in Vrindavan. But a very sweet pastime that Krishna performs in Dwarka. And that's where he receives a visit from his dear devotee and dear friend and Brahmana, Sudama. And Sudama, the place that Sudama lives, is pictured here. This is his birthplace in Porbandar. Porbandar is on a coastal city near the western side of the Gujarat area by the Arabian Sea. And there's a nice temple indicating where Sudama palace manifested long, long ago. That's not the palace that manifested, but it's a monument indicating in a temple. Inside that dome, there's a temple of Sudama. And in hearing this narration, it's nice to note, it's a subtle point, but there's different kinds of dealings or loving dealings that Krishna exchanges with Sudama. And the first of them is Krishna is in the mood or in the role of a Kshatriya, exhibiting Vedic culture by honoring a Brahmana, but not just by formality, but by great love. And then there's a section we're going to be covering where he's taking a different mood and different role, and he's the Supreme Lord, giving. And how he gives instructions is very sweet. It's subtle. He does it in the form of questions, but it's instructions. I don't know if you've done that. I do it from time to time. Giving instructions by asking questions. It's nice. It's sweet. And then the mood changes and he just becomes, or speaks in the mood of friendship. But there's also instruction in that mood of friendship. So the chapter begins with Shukadeva Goswami narrating Krishna's dear Brahmin friend named Sudama. And the characteristics of Sudama take the foreground first. His mind was peaceful, his senses were subdued, he was not only a Brahmana, but the best of knower of the meaning of the Vedas, and the knower of the meaning of the Vedas is to know Krishna. So he knew the Vedas, and he knew the meaning of the Vedas, and he knew Krishna, and he knew Krishna through devotion. And because of that devotion, and because of the particular nature that he had, he was absolutely detached from sense enjoyment, although he was a householder. Absolutely, in an abject sense, he lived in poverty. He did his Brahminical duties completely, but he was maintained just by whatever came of its own accord. He wasn't, in other words, he wasn't a sannyasi, but he lived like a sannyasi. And sannyasi, as we know, there's 4 stages of sannyas, and the Paramahansa stage was his stage of grihasta life. He didn't go out and earn a livelihood and then use that in Krishna's service. Whatever came of its own accord. He just did his Brahminical functions and duties. And as a result, he was poor and poorly dressed, and so was his wife. And he was skinny. His bones bulged and his veins bulged, and he was really skinny. And his wife, pictured on the lower left there, she was also dressed in badly colored, worn-out, soiled cloth. But her mood, she wasn't resentful. She had the same mood. It's not always like that, but in his case it was like that. Her mood was as renounced as her husband. At the same time, she's a very loyal, devoted, and dedicated wife, and she couldn't bear to see him so skinny. and so poorly dressed. So she took her chances and she spoke up about her wish. Her wish was to not see him. She wasn't saying for herself, she was saying for him. She didn't want to see him in this condition. So she appealed very sweetly, "O fortunate one, please approach him," that's Krishna, knowing his friendship and affection for Krishna. "The real shelter of all saints, he will certainly give abundant wealth to such a suffering householder as you." Now we're going to, even if requested to accept something, he would decline. So he wasn't very enthused by his wife's request. He didn't resent it or resent her because of speaking it. He understood her heart. Her concern was for him. So he began to consider, my wife is asking, very devoted, very dedicated. She's as renounced as I am. She's not complaining about her circumstance. She's concerned about me. And I'm fine in my circumstance too. But she's asking, number one, and number two, the opportunity to go meet Krishna, because Krishna is just a walk away. Dwarka is not far away. They need a boat ride to get there, but not far from where Krishna was. So he was enthused to meet Krishna. And he was quite willing as a loving husband to satisfy a reasonable and loving request of his wife. So he agreed, looking forward to seeing Krishna. And you go to meet someone, you bring a gift. So he asked, is there something I can bring to Krishna as a gift? They were so poor she didn't have anything. So she went to some nearby other householders and she was able to gather 4 handfuls of broken rice, flat rice, broken flat rice. She didn't have a nice Target or Walgreens or something, shopping bag to put it in. So she had a little torn cloth, soiled, worn out, torn cloth. She placed it in the cloth and used that as a bag and gave that to her husband for a gift to take to Krishna. So off he goes. On the left-hand side there, he's walking, holding this celebrated bag. And he's wondering, look at me. Krishna's palace, Krishna's place is filled with opulence. And how is a poor fellow like me going to even be allowed in to get audience with Krishna? He understood this is very similar to what Brahma said to Krishna, what Krishna said to Brahma. To see me is very rare. It's the greatest of all benedictions, reciprocations I can give. So he, the devoted Sudama, wasn't just like Krishna as my friend, but he understood through devotion, Krishna is the personality of God, he's carrying Krishna within his heart. Realization, he's seeing Krishna within his heart at all times. Never was he out of touch with that consciousness, and now he's going to see him face to face. But how is it possible I can see Krishna face to face? So he gets in a boat, crosses the boat to the place where Dwarka city was, and he sees this fabulously opulent Dwarka city. Palaces, assembly halls, fortresses, crossroads, and he looks like a beggar. So along with others who were brahmanas, they were allowed through the security gates, one and the next and the next. And the reason they weren't checked is because of the culture of the Yadavas and the Vrishnis, etc. they had all respect for the brahmanas, and he was very clearly not just poor, but a brahmana. So he passed all the security positions. And then as he was walking, he came, as the painting shows, down in the lower left of the painting, there's Sudama carrying that little celebrated bag of rice with him, and he just happens to pass by, according to Padma Purana. He stood for a moment in silence at the doorway of Queen Rukmini's palace. And Krishna saw him from a distance. Krishna was seated on a royal throne next to Rukmini, and he saw Sudama. There's that little bag over his shoulder. And Krishna immediately became very enlivened. He quickly rose, according to the Bhagavatam, in confusion. How did he get confused? The emotions of meeting, the ecstasy of meeting a dear, dear friend, devotee, and pure personality. So Krishna is very happy. And he quickly moved forward, firmly embraced Sudama with his arms outstretched, covering the body of Sudama with his arms and rubbing his arms on the body of Sudama, and his eyes flooded with tears. Krishna's not just being cordial, he's in ecstasy. Imagine what Sudama's feeling. The lotus-eyed Supreme Lord felt intense ecstasy upon touching the body of his dear friend, the wise Brahmana, and thus he shed tears of love. Now this shows Sudama dressed kind of nicely, and his little bag behind his back. And here is a little different painting. According to the commentary, Krishna shed tears with intensity. He embraced him with intensity and cried with intensity. So it's a sambhoga moment, an ecstatic moment. And because Sudama is meek and humble, very naturally so, and Krishna is devoted to his devotee who is meek and humble, after embracing him, Krishna forced him, because Sudama was like reluctant to sit on the couch. But he sat him on the couch. Behind, in this painting, there's Rukmini, and Krishna then began to worship a brahmana in the fitting way. All the paraphernalia was brought. Here he is washing the feet of Sudama. There's some other ladies, attendants, looking on over the shoulder. And this is a closer up painting. Krishna has tears in his eyes. Sudama has tears in his eyes. And they're not really paying too much attention to the foot wash. They're just gazing into each other's eyes. And the attendants are amazed. The love that Krishna is exhibiting to this poor fellow, and the love that the poor fellow has for Krishna, is just quite amazing. After washing his feet, Krishna then sprinkled the foot water on his own head, not ritualistically, but according to the commentary, because Krishna was controlled by his own love for his own devotee. Similar painting. And after sprinkling the water on his head, Rukmini, she's engaged also in the same worship. She's pictured here with a chamra, fanning the body of Krishna's dear friend, Sudama. The commentary says, his body was discolored because of suffering from cold. Now, I don't know the season. Generally it's hot in India, but that's what the commentary says. And from the description, the commentary says she was was it really proper for her to be worshipping Sudama? And the answer is, like her husband, because she was obedient to her husband, she's dedicated to her husband. She's dedicated to what he's dedicated to. And so she's engaged, along with other attendants, in the worship of Sudama. Now, Sudama's most likely feeling really uncomfortable, but Krishna's forcing him to accept his worship. So this is the first part. This is the Kshatriya receiving a Brahmana in the proper manner. Many nice paintings. The scene is a nice scene, so there are many such paintings. And after that procedure, next comes having him take a full bath. And after his full bath, because he had tattered, torn, shabby clothes, Krishna provided him with new clothing. And the new clothing, commentary says it's going to be revealed later why he gave new clothing, because Krishna knew that Sudama is not going to want to ask for anything, so Krishna isn't going to violate his desire to not ask for anything by not giving him anything, but giving him at least nice clothing. Shri Shri Radha Damodar ki Jai. Fragrant sandalwood, a guru fragrance, kumkum paste, worshipped him with incense and lamps and deity worship. And after that, Krishna offered a meal. It's deity worship. Krishna made a deity offering, or offered a meal. And after the meal, Krishna offered him betel nut and a gift of a cow, and then the mood starts to change. Taking it so that friendship, taking each other's hands, Krishna and Sudama talked pleasantly about how they once lived in the school of their guru, the good old days. Mood changed. And because Krishna extended himself in that mood to Sudama, Sudama reciprocated. Sudama also grasped Krishna's hands, and they started discussing their days together in school with affection and friendship. Now, it's the same Supreme Lord and the same Sudama and the same reciprocation of love. But the age is different, the mood is different, but just an earlier stage of the same mood. And their conversation was an all-attractive conversation. So Krishna began reminding him, you know well the ways of Dharma. After you offered the gifts of remuneration to our guru and returned home from his school, did you marry a compatible wife? You didn't act like, how's your marriage affairs going? But it's, you're dressed, you came here dressed so poorly. It's not normally how one sees a householder. A householder doesn't live in shabby conditions like this because they have some occupation, they have some means. So there's some instruction. It's acknowledging his mood, but it's also indicating that after one completes school, what's the ashram going to be? So did you enter the grihasta ashram? And if you entered the grihasta ashram, that's your ashram, so why are you looking so poor like this? Here's the Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur's comment. You know well the religious principle, dharmagya, that after graduating from school, one should get married in order to prevent the fault of having no ashram. So you know dharma, You're a vastly learned brahmana. You know Dharma. Did you get married? What was the qualification, the quality of that wife that you married? And the indication is Krishna was omniscient, and he knew that Sudama had no attraction for material opulence. He had no attraction at all. Just see, this man, though a householder, is without desires and does not desire anything from others. Even if forcibly given, he will not accept things. Therefore, Krishna didn't give him in his presence, but he gave later. He didn't interfere with the mood of his devotee, respecting the mood of his devotee. But he wants, so he did it in a different way. For the sake of your wife, this is Vishwanath's commentary, for the sake of your wife, you are displaying a favorable disposition towards material wealth, although you don't have a disposition for material wealth. Again, Krishna is going to give something later. He just, for the satisfaction of his wife, which was the satisfaction to Sudama, and his reciprocation with Sudama. And one might think, I've often, in contemplating this pastime, why did Krishna leave him in poverty for so long before he came to Dwarka? And Krishna's respecting his mood. But now, voluntarily, because he's come, not explicitly asking, but with the purpose to ask, to satisfy his wife, because his wife's satisfaction was his need, not hers. So he came and to see Krishna. So all of that was the dynamic of their relationship, and Krishna's respecting it. But also this other was reciprocated with privately. He chose to not give him anything present when he was visiting. Having renounced all material propensities which spring from the Lord's illusory energy, this is Krishna speaking, from the Lord's illusory energy, some people execute worldly duties with their minds undisturbed by mundane desires. They act as I do, to instruct the general populace. So this statement is very similar to the statement that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made to Ramananda Roy. Don't behave silly. You go back home and act as if you're attached. Perform your duties as if you're attached, but don't be attached. All the while, keep your mind absorbed in me, and surely you will eventually come to me because you won't be attached. So Raghunath Das displayed his prowess, his capacity in dealing with material affairs, but he had no attraction for it, but he was capable. So as I act, so you should act, as instruction for others. Commentary. Though not completely overcome by desire, some, with discrimination, get married and follow conduct of a householder to destroy their attraction for enjoying. So that's the thorn, to remove a thorn principle, where religious householders live religiously without attachment for the purpose of teaching others, and whatever residual tendency may be there for material enjoyment, to lose it by proper execution of household duties. Then the scene changes. Of course, it's not totally abrupt, but Krishna starts reminiscing their school days. They learned from their teacher equally well. Krishna learned, of course he's omniscient, but he learned as a student in 64 days. He completed school. Fast track. And when one has sufficient education, spiritual education and training, then one can live in the world but not be attached to the world. Live beyond ignorance. Realizing the knowledge imparted by one's guru, so there's discussion about the relationship with their guru and the importance of disciple and guru relationship, even by someone like Sudama and Krishna, who are already highly qualified. And by that submission to Guru, the teacher, then one becomes qualified to be not only detached, but in Vaikuntha consciousness. To destroy criticizing the fault of enduring great hardships, and to show that such a life is the cause of happiness, Krishna glorifies the service to one's guru. So there's a principle being enacted. Gopal Champu also speaks about this pastime. Specifically, this is the 64-day perfection. All the branches of knowledge of the Vedas were learned. And there was a great deal of affection for both the teacher, Sandipani Muni, and for Sandipani Muni's wife. And she, the teacher, and the wife of the teacher, had great affection for these qualified students, naturally. My dear friend, he who gives a person his physical birth is his first spiritual master, and he who initiates him as a twice-born Brahmana and engages him in religious duties is indeed more directly his spiritual master. But the person who bestows transcendental knowledge upon the members of all the spiritual orders of society is one's ultimate spiritual master. Indeed, he is as good as my own self. So Krishna is giving friendship, but also instructions about guru and disciple relationship. Of the three gurus, one who gives knowledge of the Lord is the highest guru. So Sandipani Muni instructed them in all the limbs, the angas of the Vedas, but most important, and throughout all of those instructions, are instructions in the relationship of the personality of Godhead. Of course, one of them is the personality of Godhead. And in the course of their dealings with one another, Sudama came to understand that. I, the soul of all beings, Antaryami, am not as satisfied by ritual worship, Brahminical initiation, penances, or self-discipline as I am by faithful service rendered to one's spiritual master. Strong. And there's several other statements that are just haven't included because this is synopsis. Then this celebrated event. They went to the forest at the request of Sandipani Muni's wife to gather firewood for the yajna for her husband. So she made the request. The boys are gathering the firewood, and many nice paintings of the scene in the forest. And as they're gathering the firewood, an unseasonable big storm came. And when that unseasonable big storm came, it's something like 2 days ago, the really heavy rain here. Must have been flooding somewhere. But then it started flooding. It became so much flooded that you couldn't tell high ground from low ground because there was water everywhere. And so what to do? And they just took shelter of each other. Having extolled the virtue of service to Guru, Krishna now invokes the following childhood memory. By suffering hardship together during our service to Guru, we established firm friendship. Sounds like ISKCON, right? Then, as the sun set, the forest was covered by darkness in every direction, and with flooding we could not distinguish high land from low. Constantly besieged by the powerful wind and rain, we lost our way amidst the flooding waters. We simply held each other's hands, and in great distress, wandered aimlessly about in the forest. Of course, that's more cartoonish. Here's another nice depiction. This doesn't so much show the flooding. So what did they do? Eventually they found a place where they could lie down and rest. And so in the morning, the teacher saw that they hadn't come back. He knew that they had gone, but they hadn't come back. So he personally, along with many of the other students, went in a little search party. And sure enough, they found Sudama and Krishna together. He found, and he was in great distress. He showed them great affection and took them back to the ashram and began appreciating their dedication and devotion. My children, you suffered so much for my sake and for my wife's sake, disregarding your own comfort, because you are so dedicated to me. He was feeling grateful. Not that, anyway, not just expecting it, but it's natural. Those that make sacrifices for another, there's a gratitude for the one unto whom the sacrifice is being made. There's gratitude in the hearts of those who are making the sacrifices. It's the bond of loving affection. This indeed is the duty of all true disciples, to repay the debt to their spiritual master by offering him with pure hearts their wealth and even their very lives. So lesson within the lesson within the lesson. And this is the final slide for this evening. Sudama's reply, after hearing this reminiscing by Krishna: what could I have possibly failed to achieve, O Lord of Lords, O universal teacher, since I was able to personally live with you, whose every desire is fulfilled, at the home of our spiritual master. So Sudama doesn't depart from the mood of being devoted to Krishna. Now, there's another chapter, and I hope you'll be inspired to read the next chapter, because I'm not going to do it right now because of time. But there they are, sitting together in Dwarka, reminiscing, going through these three phases of moods, Krishna to Sudama. It's the same two persons. But then, rather than Krishna asking what was it that inspired you to come, because he's omniscient, he already knew what inspired him to come, so he didn't ask him. He just said, what's that bag you're holding behind your back? Did you bring a gift for me? And Sudama was ashamed, because it's unfit to be offered to the opulent Supreme Lord. And so, you know what happened. Krishna snatched it. He opened up the full of holes, worn cloth bag, and saw the rice. Oh, you're having a feast. And he started eating some of the rice. You know what happened next. He went to get some more, and Rukmini grabbed his hand. It's not fit for you. He didn't say, leave me alone. He just... There wasn't that kind of relationship. he accepted the paltry offering because it was offered with love. And, genuine, genuine, genuine. Maybe you have had such memorable moments. I'll tell you one of my memorable moments. Once upon a time, I was visiting someplace. And it was one of those, it was an international flight, and it came, the departure was late at night, and it arrived at the early morning. It was one of those, because there just aren't other flights. So I came before Mangal Arti, and so I was, not clean, so I went to my room to take a bath, and took a bath, and was putting on my tilak and my dhoti. And as I was putting on my dhoti, there's a young girl, maybe 4 years old. She couldn't wait. As I'm putting on my dhoti, she walked in the door and offered me a gift. And the gift was a set of beads that couldn't fit around my neck, but it was supposed to go around my neck. And it's different colors and different sizes. And she couldn't wait. And I just practically started crying because, her enthusiasm was without limits. So enthusiastic, she couldn't even let me put my dhoti on. And I remember to this day, the offering was an offering of enthusiastic love and devotion. It was practically meaningless and worthless, but it was the love with which the gift was made and offered. She's one of these youngsters that's quiet and shy. But she overcame her shyness and quietness, and because she wanted to make some little offering. So those are the kinds of reciprocations that are especially heart-touching. That was the reciprocation between Krishna and Sudama. And commentary says, how are you going to repay him? Rukmini is not, because she knows Krishna is unlimitedly opulent, but how are you going to repay him? It's because it's offered with such love, although it's paltry and poor. For Krishna to reciprocate is not a problem. His opulence is without limit. No problem for Krishna. So they had their parting words, and the same day, Sudama started going back. One day visit. All this happened in the course of one day. And then he's going back and thinking, this part I like very much. He's thinking, Krishna's so kind. Krishna knew why I came, but he didn't ask me why I came, because if he had asked me, I would have had to say, because I'm a Brahmin, I had to be truthful. And if I said, then Krishna would give me so much opulence, I would become proud. Because Krishna wanted to protect me from pride, he didn't ask me. Krishna is so kind. Krishna is so kind. And this absorption all the way back to Porbandar. And when he reached Porbandar, he was surprised. He couldn't find his home. Instead, in the place where his home was, he saw a palace. What happened? It was just one day. It was just gone. And from the palace came some lady he didn't recognize, but it was his wife. Who are you? Oh, I'm your wife. Oh. Because she was dressed opulently in ornaments, and she wasn't proud. She was happy that her husband had asked Krishna, and this was Krishna's reciprocation. That's what she thought. She didn't know what happened. Krishna is so kind. And so he thought, Krishna is so kind. The end of this other chapter is he continued to live just sleeping on the bare floor. He didn't become an enjoyer of the opulence. No, he could have, because he was detached from it. He could have engaged with it without attachment to it, but he stayed in that same mood of, didn't wear torn clothes, but he was not attached. And that was his nature. His nature didn't change, even with opulence. And it's a little bit like what we discussed about the abhadras of pride, because having something, it's really easy to become proud. When you have not much, then you have something, or have something and you get more, and become proud of that something, to being the possessor of something. But he had no sense of possessiveness. Nor did his wife. But she was happy because now there had sufficient edibles for her skinny husband to not be so skinny. I mean, specifically it describes his bones were showing and his veins were showing, bulging from his skin. He was so skinny. So, Madarena samapayet, ending on a sweet note. We're going to end. Parama-Karuna's got his hand up already. And Paramarupa's got his hand up too. Do we have the microphone?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much for such a wonderful narration of the pastime of Sudama. My question is that clearly when Sudama grew up, he knew that Krishna is the Supreme Lord.
Yes.
My question is that when they were young, at that time what was Sudama's mood? Did he have that knowledge that he is the Supreme Lord?
It doesn't specifically say one way or the other, but the way I've understood it is he started to understand. Through loving exchanges and loving service together, he started to understand. The door of realization started to open, and he started to understand. Because later, Krishna left 64 days after joining the school. So he was carrying Krishna in his heart. So it can mean, metaphorically, but he's a devotee. So through this earlier verse, sarahasyaṁ, tad-aṅgaṁ cha, the mystery of devotional service, mysteries became revealed to him through the medium of service. So how quickly the sun rose, and then it became full sunny day, it's not explicitly discussed in any commentary that I've come across, but it was a gradual realization because of his devotion to Krishna.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Can I ask another follow-up?
Yeah, sure.
So, Guru Maharaj, so this occurs after the killing of Kamsa, and then he goes to school. That school is somewhere in Vraja or
no.
in Mathura?
No. Specifically, the location is by the sea, in Gujarat, by the sea, not far from Dwarka. But the selection, the commentary says, the selection of Guru was specifically a non-Vaishnava. But the Guru became a Vaishnava by the association of his student. Sandipani Muni was not a Vaishnava, but he was a learned person, a well-known learned teacher. So Krishna selected him, and the parents were fine with that selection because he was a well-known, celebrated teacher, but far from Braja, far from Mathura, Porbandar. Gujarat, then by the sea, is far from Mathura.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. I have a comment and a question. My comment is more thinking about that figure that you showed up, that 6 times, 12 times, 30 times that. So I mean, clearly that figure is wrong, but I was trying to think like where the typo is. So I feel the way the calculation they were making is...
Speak slowly. The way that I what?
I think the way the calculation is being conceived of is that 1 celestial day is equal to 6 months of earthly time. And so the multiplier should have been 2.
That's where the 6 comes from.
So
okay.
the multiplier should have been 2 considering the night time. So instead of 12. So I think that 1 should be dropped. Then the multiplier overall will be 360, which is correct.
You're speaking fast again.
So
that's okay. I think I got it. My puzzlement was where's the 6 come from?
I was also thinking.
I know you were.
So I think that instead of 12, it should be 2.
Speak slowly.
Instead of 12, it should have been 2 in that whole 6 times 30 times 12 figure. I think that's where the typo is. I have a question. So you referenced 298 for Brahma's 1,000 celestial years of austerity, but the third canto, 310.4, Brahma is doing austerity for 100 celestial years. So how do we reconcile the 2 figures?
One is the verse and the other is Prabhupada's purport.
Both are verses, like even 310.
No, what I put on the screen was a cut and paste from a purport.
Oh.
And it gave the verse. It was 2.9.8 purport.
Oh, okay. Okay, so then 100 celestial years should be the correct figure.
We can go by the verse. Okay. And the purport, it doesn't have as much weight as the verse.
Okay.
So that's how to reconcile it. That's one way to reconcile it.
Thank you.
Way in the back. Way in the back.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, I was just noticing for myself that the pastime of Sudama and Krishna getting lost in the forest while collecting firewood for their guru's wife, I thought that was very sweet, especially considering, in a way, Krishna could have changed the weather, changed something, but...
He brought the weather, what to speak.
For me, the point was he chose to suffer in a way along with Sudama. I found that very sweet. That's what I want to share. Thank you.
Yeah, it's... Yeah. What you're saying is what our Acharya is saying, that the nature of undergoing hardships together in the course of serving Guru is one of the bonds of loving affection between the servitors. So Krishna orchestrated the bond of affection, that they undergo tribulation together and endured it together, hand in hand, for service to Guru. That part didn't change. The service to Guru part didn't change. The hardship came, the hardship went. But the bond of affection grew by the circumstance, which Krishna arranged for loving exchange purposes. Okay.
Thank you.
Now there's some way up front. You had... Okay, but he's before you. So give her the microphone. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. In the starting slide I have seen Brahma is saying Lord's form as mundane, where all other scriptures says it's transcendental. Could you explain that?
What's your question?
the first slide.
The first slide.
Brahma was saying.
You're all spiritual, my dear Lord Krishna. You're all spiritual. Could you help me understand how material comes from all spiritual? But all spiritual, there's a reflection, abhas, that's not the same as the spiritual from which the reflection comes. Or the material energies are transformations of Krishna's spiritual potencies. That's the relationship between the spirit, the material realm, and that from which the material realm comes. And Brahma wanted to understand the relationship. That this material world is insubstantial, yet you assume this universal form, this insubstantial form. Could you explain it? It's not like asking for, how does the engineering of this thing work? It's what's the relationship? Because he's going to have to do it. That's his service, is to build the universe. So he wants to understand from the source of the universe, how does it work? He's getting his college education before he goes to the office to do his work. Yes?
Guru Maharaj, this is a question from Hemangi Mataji. From yesterday morning class on Bhagavata Seva, we have the topic here also. I have the voice message. May I play that or ask the question? Okay. So Mataji is asking, in the beginning, we hear that the way we get the taste...
The beginning, what happened?
We hear that we get the taste, faith and attraction for book Bhagavata by hearing from a person Bhagavata. And that knowledge can be revealed by practical devotional service to person Bhagavata. And Mataji is asking, in the current day and age, we have recordings of so many speakers.
Regarding the what?
Recordings.
I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time understanding you. You understand yourself, but I'm having that... Say it without the microphone. Maybe I can understand better.
We have the recordings, virtual recordings of anyone and everyone accessible. So we don't have this aspect of rendering personal service to the speaker. How that process works.
How the
process works when the company...
It works spiritually. The receiver doesn't have to be physically there extending their hand to receive something. For something to be offered and something to be received. Service can be rendered not just virtually, but through sound. Just wait a minute. I'll get you. Just wait a minute. According to Sankhya philosophy, sound conveys the idea of a thing. That's material sound. Spiritual sound not only conveys the idea of the thing, but the thing. Spiritual sound is not different than the object. Krishna and Krishna's name are not different. Krishna is conveyed through sound. So whether that sound is, you're hearing the sound, it was one of the questions that you asked the other day, or you're hearing the recording. Because there's a lot of people that aren't in the room, like Premananda, and in hearing, but they're not present in the room for different reasons. People are hearing whenever they're hearing, at a later point in time. I mean, I plan to hear some of the recordings of classes that I missed because of service that I was called upon to do, of hearing the recordings of some of the classes here. And it's not the same as sitting in the classroom. But the message is being conveyed through sound. And there's reciprocation with the speaker. I'll embarrass Shatarupa right now. I had a conversation today with Danishta about something, some service. And she said, woo, woo, woo. That she's hearing, I don't know how it's happening, but she especially liked, she said it 3 times, the bhajan that you sang. She was crying. And she said, share it with her. She said, I don't know when it's okay to share it. I said, share. It's, how she processes it, that's up to her. But you share I'm doing it publicly. And it's just, Krishna gives some gifts to somebody, and somebody, Radhika Raman, I wasn't attending his classes, but she was saying, Danishta was saying, that clarity, this and that and that and this and that, and he has such a grasp and command and conveys it so eloquently and elegantly and compellingly and sweetly, and it's like, wow, what a gifted person. And to come here and give their gift. And I wasn't in the classroom. But, I'm really looking forward to hearing the other classes that I missed. And I won't say the other names because I don't want to embarrass anybody. But so it's the idea of a thing is conveyed through sound, and the thing is conveyed through spiritual sound. So that's how it happens. It's whether it's in person or remotely or recorded. It's different, but it's the same as well as being different.
I'm sorry to correct, just an addition. I think Margaret is mainly asking when we don't have any personal relationship from the receiver side. We don't have opportunity to offer some service, but we are hearing them.
I think I've answered the question. Because service, service can take different shapes. You give your heart to someone, and that's a service, isn't it? Whether that little girl came and brought that little necklace of different color, different size beads that, I couldn't wear anyways because it was too small. It's the gesture can be reciprocated with even remotely. So it's okay. It's okay. Okay, Advaita Chandra, and then we're going to end. Go all the way in the back, in the corner, and come forward a little bit. Speak slowly. He speaks slowly anyways.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. So one of the things I find inspiring about the story of Sudama and his wife is they were renounced and remained transcendental even when their body and mind, went through suffering, right? They were impoverished.
Yes.
They didn't have food to eat and all that. And personally, I find it even more challenging, like when I'm weak, physically weak, or have some ailment.
Yeah, you have a few ailments, I'm familiar.
Right?
Yeah.
It becomes more challenging, and especially when you have your spouse also ill, it gets even more challenging. So could you shed some light on how did Sudama and his wife, how did they remain so fixed and transcendental?
Bhakti. I mean, the simple answer is the whole description of his detachment was resting upon bhakti. By nature, he was a renounced type, but he became abjectly renounced because of the strength of bhakti. His senses were controlled, his mind was controlled. I mean, let's take Prabhupada. He had nothing for a long stretch. And his health was bad for a long stretch. I didn't know until much later what his health condition was, what he was enduring through all that he went through. So it's by bhakti. And bhakti has a shape. You know, in his case, in Prabhupada's case, it was a mission. In Sudama's case, it was just simply devotion to Krishna. Now, Krishna is not far away. He didn't feel the urgency to go to be with Krishna, although he's traveling distance away, within 1 day's traveling distance. He didn't go because he was content within. So it's possible when there's transcendental contentment within through devotion. And then when there's transcendental contentment through devotion, that can have or not have. And it doesn't change, the contentment within. That's special. That's bhakti. Okay, gonna end. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Hare Krishna. Just a few minutes, a few announcements. Before that, there was a watch found in front of the Welcome Center. So if any one of you have lost your watch, or anybody you know that has lost the watch, please ask them to come and collect it from me. The announcements, there is some shortage